I stood in the grand lobby of the Mountain Pine Lodge, a place I had spent months transforming from a dreary, failing relic into what I hoped would be a shining example of modern mountain hospitality. My reflection wavered in the newly polished floors, where the old stained carpeting had been torn out and replaced with luxurious, warmly toned tiles that brought a kind of gentle glow to the space. The overhead lights, carefully chosen for their soft luminance, shimmered against the rustic wooden beams overhead. The check-in desk, once battered with chipped edges, now gleamed beneath a row of pendant lamps that cast a welcoming ambience. It was a testament to my late nights, my haggling with suppliers for better deals, my scribbled designs on countless scraps of paper, and my 2 decades of hotel management expertise honed in Chicago's high-pressure hospitality world. My name is Claire Anderson. I am 52 years old, and for the past 20 years, I thrived in a challenging environment of big city hotel chains, working my way up from a front desk coordinator to a regional director. I knew every corner of the industry: logistics, finances, staff development, marketing synergy, crisis management. I loved it truly. Yet, I never foresaw that I would one day return to my family's modest lodge in the Colorado Rockies, the same place where I grew up chasing my little brother in its dimly lit hallways. The call that changed everything came from my father, a trembling voice, an admission that the Mountain Pine Lodge was teetering on the brink of closure. They had mere weeks before the bank would foreclose. Family is family, I thought. I could not bear the thought of losing the lodge that had shaped my childhood memories. Holidays spent stringing up decorations in the lobby, summer evenings sweeping the porch while guests sipped iced tea. So I made the decision fast as lightning. I sold my condo in Chicago, withdrew my savings, and drove back across the country to the only place I'd once called home. When I arrived, the lodge was worse than I ever imagined. The walls seemed to carry an air of defeat, the carpets smelled of mildew, online guest reviews were abysmal, the reservation system was archaic, and staff morale was in the basement. My father's face was etched with guilt and despair, and my mother fussed anxiously but offered no real plan. My younger brother, Ryan, was nowhere in sight. He was off gallivanting with friends, as usual. Or networking, as he liked to term it. It was obvious from day one what needed to be done. The finances were bleeding out, the marketing was non-existent, and even routine maintenance had fallen behind. I had no time to lose if I wanted to avert bankruptcy. I threw myself into every aspect of the job, personally cleaning rooms to understand their condition, calling up old Chicago contacts to secure discounted refurbishment materials, overhauling the digital booking system so that modern travelers could actually find us online. The staff, once jaded, began to perk up when they saw real changes. A fresh coat of paint in the lobby, new pillows and bedding that felt luxurious instead of threadbare, a robust training session on how to handle guests with the courtesy and warmth that fosters loyalty. We launched social media campaigns, scheduled local events, partnered with a farm-to-table restaurant concept to revitalize our neglected dining area. It was exhausting, exhilarating, nerve-wracking. Night after night, I pored over spreadsheets, strategizing how to stretch every dollar of the limited budget, and how to push the lodge up from its 2-star misery. My father, though initially relieved I had taken charge, remained cautious, still seeing me as a detail person rather than a big-picture visionary. My mother hovered, praising me superficially but concluding each compliment with, "Can't wait until Ryan comes on board. He has such modern ideas." But I brushed it off. I had no illusions that Ryan, who hopped between half-baked startups, would commit to real labor. This was my mission now. If they were too blind to see my true capabilities, I would at least rescue our family property, preserve my grandparents' legacy, and keep the staff employed. That alone was motivation enough. In 8 months of relentless effort, I witnessed a transformation I'd hardly dared to dream. The Mountain Pine Lodge's occupancy rates soared from an anemic 20% to nearly 70%, and that was just the shoulder season. We started receiving decent online reviews. The local tourism board, once ignoring us, added our name back to recommended lodging lists. Financially, we began to see a glimmer of hope. Staff who had been on the verge of quitting seemed revitalized. Tom, our head chef, introduced a new seasonal menu emphasizing local ingredients, which brought a surge of positive word of mouth. Everything looked promising. But all that changed the day my parents announced that Ryan would be the new CEO. I still recall that morning as if it's etched in stone. The meeting in the newly refurbished lounge, staff arranged in rows of chairs, my father at the front clearing his throat awkwardly. My mother beamed with pride, while Ryan strolled in late, wearing that smug grin I knew only too well. I waited, anticipating some mention of me, or a direct expression of gratitude for the woman who had turned the tide. Instead, they delivered a bombshell. "We're so proud to welcome Ryan as the official CEO of the Mountain Pine Lodge," said my mother, face glowing as if bestowing the greatest gift upon her beloved son. My father nodded, offering a stiff smile. "Yes, Claire has done amazing work these past months, but we believe Ryan's visionary approach is what we need long-term." Ryan casually dropped a few self-congratulatory remarks, mostly buzzwords like innovation, millennial outreach, leading-edge marketing, and ended with a confident smirk. "I look forward to taking us to new heights." Hot bitter rage surged through me. I had labored tirelessly, used my industry connections, sacrificed the comfortable life I'd built in Chicago, poured in my savings, all so that Ryan, who had never shown any real interest, could waltz in and assume leadership. It was a gut punch, a stark reminder of the golden child dynamic that had overshadowed my entire life. My parents had always favored him, always glossed over his failings, always treated me as the reliable but unremarkable older daughter. Just once, I dared hope that my verifiable achievements would open their eyes. Clearly I was mistaken. That evening, they announced Ryan's elevation to CEO in front of the staff. Some employees looked confused, others dismayed, because they knew exactly who had led the rescue. But none of them dared protest. Meanwhile, Ryan strolled around with self-importance, telling everyone how he was going to revolutionize the lodge. Felt nauseous. I wanted to hurl the stack of financial reports I'd compiled into his face. I tried one more time to confront my parents privately, brandishing spreadsheets that showed how my strategies were working. They responded with condescending reassurance. "We appreciate all your detail work, dear, but Ryan is the real leader. Let him handle the big decisions." I asked Ryan if he even understood the booking system upgrades I'd implemented, or the staff scheduling matrix that had improved housekeeping efficiency. He laughed, saying, "Numbers aren't everything, sis. You're so fixated on small details that you miss the big picture." The big picture. The big picture was that, without me, the lodge would have died months ago. The big picture was that Ryan had no clue how to handle the day-to-day operations of a hospitality business, let alone keep staff morale up. I saw my parents and Ryan smugly praising each other's visions, and something inside me snapped. If they wanted to throw me under the bus, I'd let them, but not before I made a plan of my own. That plan emerged when I drove past the abandoned Riverside Lodge, once our primary competitor in the region. Its sign read, "For sale," battered by the elements, but the property's location near the slopes was prime. I'd heard rumors it shut down after a series of mismanagement fiascos. Yet, the building itself still looked structurally sound, and the vantage point overlooking the river was stunning. If given the right resources and attention, it could become something spectacular, maybe even overshadowing my parents' lodge. That night, I called a real estate broker friend, set up an appointment to view the property, and started quietly mustering what funds I had left, as well as contacting potential investors from my Chicago network. My plan was simple. If the family hotel refused to acknowledge me, I'd show them my worth by building a far superior property. Within weeks, I had purchased Riverside Lodge at a discount rate, rebranded it as the Summit, and launched the mother of all renovation projects. I found a top-notch interior designer with whom I'd collaborated in Chicago, and convinced them to move out here for half a year. I personally interviewed every prospective staff member, prioritizing those who cared about service, who believed in my vision. Many of them were ex-employees of the old Riverside or even disillusioned folks from Mountain Pine who sought a better environment. Simultaneously, I had to keep working at Mountain Pine in some capacity to maintain appearances, but I minimized my involvement, letting Ryan flounder while I funneled my real passion into the Summit. By day, I played the docile operations manager for my parents, biting my tongue as Ryan made harebrained decisions. By night, I was at the summit, conferring with contractors, finalizing design choices, brainstorming marketing campaigns. Ryan's reign at Mountain Pine started showing cracks almost immediately. He cut back on housekeeping to reduce labor costs, ignoring that cleanliness was a top priority for guests. He replaced our complimentary breakfast with a paid service, outraging loyal visitors who had come to love the old traditions. Staff turnover ballooned. Online reviews plummeted. I overheard him scolding Maria, our front desk supervisor, for not adopting some random idea he'd gotten from a business blog. She was nearly in tears, but he threatened to fire her if she didn't comply. The morale I had painstakingly built collapsed, and guest complaints soared. My parents, though anxious, still parroted, "He's learning, give him time." Fed up, I kept investing my heart into the summit, which was shaping up beautifully. I replaced outdated carpets with locally sourced wooden floors, installed a modern spa with hot stone treatments, curated a farm-to-table restaurant concept that brought in fresh produce daily, and even planned a small event space for weddings or retreats. It was everything I had wanted to implement at Mountain Pine but was denied. The day the summit finally opened its doors felt like destiny. I hosted a grand opening gala, inviting local officials, media, and travelers I'd befriended in the industry. They came in droves, curious to see how a once derelict lodge could transform into a luxury haven in just 6 months. Lights glowed warmly in the refurbished lobby. A jazz trio played softly. The bar served signature cocktails named after local mountain peaks, and the staff moved with polished grace. I wore a modest but elegant dress, personally greeting guests as they arrived, heart pounding with pride. Midway through the evening, I noticed my parents enter with Ryan, faces taut. Their eyes widened at the bustling, vibrant atmosphere, guests swirling around in near euphoria, all praising the summit's interior design and top-tier service. Ryan's expression hardened as he saw me greeting a local reporter who was penning an article on the region's hottest new lodge. My father coughed awkwardly. Mother fidgeted with her scarf. It was painfully obvious they had never anticipated I could pull off something this grand, this quickly. Ryan sidled up to me asking, "What's your angle here, sis? Trying to bury us?" I smirked, remembering how he had casually brushed off my concerns about the family business. "No angle, Ryan. Just doing my job, the one you told me I was too detail-oriented to handle." A flush crept up his neck, but before he could retort, a journalist whisked me away for an interview. Throughout the night, the success of the summit was undeniable, and the overshadowed older sister had finally stepped into the spotlight on her own terms. In the following months, the contrast between the summit's meteoric rise and Mountain Pine's descent could not have been starker. Guests flocked to my lodge after reading rave reviews online, while negative word-of-mouth about Ryan's bungled policies at Mountain Pine spread like wildfire. TripAdvisor and other sites were flooded with complaints about unclean rooms, staff shortages, cancelled shuttle services, and breakfast fees. Meanwhile, the summit soared to a near 5-star rating, receiving mention in a travel magazine as Colorado's new gem. Eventually, Dad reached out, voice trembling with guilt, explaining that Ryan was in over his head. They were hemorrhaging money, and the bank was threatening to recall the loans if occupancy didn't improve. He asked if I'd consider stepping in to help Ryan fix things. I gave a polite but firm refusal, stating I was busy with my own enterprise now. I heard the disbelief in his silence, as though he never expected me to have the backbone to say no. With no rescue forthcoming, Mountain Pine's finances collapsed. Ryan's ill-conceived ideas continued to drive it deeper into debt. Staff who had stuck around out of loyalty eventually quit, many joining me at the summit. In under a year, the lodge my parents had cherished for decades slipped through their fingers and into foreclosure. They were forced to sell, at a fraction of its potential value. Meanwhile, the summit became the talk of the region. Our occupancy soared, we expanded with additional suites, and I introduced guided wilderness tours, forging partnerships with local adventure companies. On social media, Pictures of our scenic lounge and well-appointed rooms inundated travelers' feeds, drawing in more and more curious visitors. I felt an odd mixture of triumph and sorrow. Yes, I had proven my worth beyond any doubt, but at the cost of losing the family property. Still, they had made that choice, not me. They had chosen Ryan and relegated me to a side role, ignoring all the signs that I was the one with expertise. So in the end, perhaps it was their heartbreak, not mine. When the dust settled, I found a measure of peace. My parents, shamed and battered by the fiasco, reached out sporadically. My father apologized once, in a voice thick with regret, admitting they never should have sidelined me. My mother left tearful voicemails lamenting that Ryan had vanished somewhere, chasing another get-rich-quick scheme. But I couldn't bring myself to care. I had the summit, a thriving monument to my abilities, a place that welcomed guests with unwavering warmth, something I had never felt from my own family. Recognition soon followed. I was invited to speak at hospitality conferences. Articles were written about how the summit had upstaged the old mainstay. Some local folks called me cold-hearted for competing with family, but those who knew the real story offered quiet kudos. They saw a woman scorned, rising above adversity to build something new. Maybe they admired me or pitied the family rift or both. It didn't matter. Every morning I walked through the summit's lobby, greeting staff, checking small details. A crooked painting, a scuff on the floor, the temperature of the coffee in the lounge. Ryan had mocked me for being too detail-oriented, but that was precisely what made the summit shine. Guests praised the thoroughness, the intangible sense that everything was curated for their comfort. Efficiency soared because the staff felt nurtured under my watch, not bullied by random changes. We soon received a major award from a respected travel publication, naming us one of the top boutique lodges in the country. I flew to the award ceremony with my senior staff, stepping onto a stage I'd once only dreamed of. The host read a brief summary of the summit's rise from a derelict property to a shining gem of the Rockies. Cheers echoed through the auditorium as I accepted the plaque. In that moment, I felt no bitterness, only the sweet satisfaction of accomplishment. Returning home, I organized a celebration for my employees, because they deserved the glory as much as I did. Music filled our refurbished event hall. Staff clinked glasses of sparkling cider, each wearing the proud grin of a job well done. Sarah found me near the bar, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "Thank you for saving all of us." I hugged her, understanding that in building the summit, I had also built a new family, one bound by shared labor and respect, not blood ties that demanded my submission. Time passed, and news came that the new owners of Mountain Pine were attempting renovations. My parents lived quietly in a smaller home, each phone call to me more subdued. Dad's voice carried regret, Mom's voice carried guilt. Occasionally, they asked if I'd ever consider reuniting as a family. I said maybe, if they truly recognized that I was no longer the overshadowed daughter desperate for their approval. They nodded, tears sometimes brimming, promising they understood. Yet I rarely found time to see them. My heart had moved on. On the cusp of the summit's second anniversary, an even bigger honor arrived. We were nominated for a regional tourism award for innovative hospitality excellence. I walked the polished floors of my lodge, scanning the busy lounge filled with visitors from across the country. My staff bustled, each confident in their roles, each proud to be part of something that had outshone the negativity of my past. A surge of gratitude welled inside me. If my parents had never dismissed me, if Ryan had never been made CEO, I might never have known I was capable of forging this empire. Looking around, I realized that was the best revenge. Not tearing them down or stooping to pettiness, but thriving beyond their wildest imagination. I had built a lodge they once refused to let me run, built it from ashes of an abandoned property. I soared above the family name they had tried to confine me with, and I soared on my own wings. When my father's health declined months later, I visited him at the hospital. He spoke in a trembling voice about how proud he was, how sorry he felt for not trusting me. My mother wept by his bedside, clutching my hand, whispering that I had proven them all wrong, that they should have listened. I gave them both a kind, forgiving smile, telling them that despite everything, I was grateful for the adversity, because it had shown me who I really was, what I could accomplish, and how unstoppable I could be when I refused to let others define my limits. Dad passed soon after, and though sorrowful, I returned to the summit with a renewed sense of purpose. Life was short, too short to dwell on betrayal or regrets. My staff needed me. Guests from around the world wanted the experiences we offered, and I had a future to keep building. In the years that followed, the summit achieved unprecedented acclaim. Articles in national newspapers, social media influencers flocking for a taste of mountain chic. I expanded the spa, added new rooms that offered panoramic views of snowy peaks, and partnered with local ecologists to promote sustainable tourism. Each new development was a reminder that I no longer had to beg for recognition from the people who overlooked me. My success was a testament to my vision, my detail-oriented approach, and my unwavering perseverance. When the 10th anniversary of the summit finally arrived, we hosted a grand celebration that drew celebrities, influential travel writers, and local dignitaries. I stood at the front of the lounge, microphone in hand, addressing a crowd of hundreds. My staff lined the edges, some teary-eyed, some beaming with pride. "Thank you," I said, voice catching slightly. "Thank you for believing in the summit. This place was once a rundown relic, but we saw potential. And we proved that with passion, expertise, and teamwork, we could create something extraordinary." The applause thundered, resonating through the rafters. As I glanced around, I spotted my mother in the crowd, standing with watery eyes, nodding slowly. Ryan was nowhere to be seen, though I had half expected him. A pang tugged at my chest for what might have been, but it faded quickly amid the warmth of the moment. Eventually, as the applause subsided, I set down the microphone and let the staff greet the crowd. Sarah stepped forward, hugging me, tears on her cheeks. "You did it, Claire," she whispered. "And we're all so grateful you brought us along for the ride." I realized then with crystal clarity that I had created a true family here, one formed not by blood but by choice, by shared goals, by mutual respect. This was the family that recognized my value from day one. And in forging these bonds, I found the acceptance and fulfillment I had once vainly sought from my parents. Walking outside, the crisp mountain air filled my lungs. Stars glimmered overhead, the same silent witnesses to my struggles and triumphs. I remembered that day long ago, when Mom had told me I was too detail-oriented. Ryan had laughed. I remembered feeling small, overshadowed, worthless. Now I looked at the summit, lights glowing in every room, the sound of laughter drifting from the open windows, a testament to success built on attention to those very details they scoffed at. I breathed in deeply, feeling no bitterness, no anger, only a serene sense of accomplishment. This was revenge, yes, but it was also redemption, the redemption of my own faith in myself. I had soared above the constraints of a dismissive family, and in doing so, found the life I was meant to lead. And so I whispered to the mountains, a gentle vow in the cold night air. "Thank you for driving me away, for underestimating me, for teaching me how unstoppable I am on my own."